Okay, so it's Peter here again for the festival team, and I'm here to talk about Micropubs. Would you like to introduce yourself, Peter?
Hi everyone, I'm Dan Eycott. I'm one of the directors, producers / filmmakers of the film.
And I'm Trevor Puddifoot of the River Ale House in East Greenwich.
Excellent stuff. First question, Danny, what made you want to make a film about Micropubs?
So it was actually my other director and producer colleagues, Sid and James. They were working on a feature film in Swanscombe and Gravesend, and Sid was producing it and James was a runner on it. And he said he was going to a Micropub one evening on set, and James went, Sid went, what's that? And he's like, oh, it's you'd have to kind of see it to believe it kind of thing. And he went along and went, I like this, and then they come to me and go, I think you'd like this. I went, okay, let's go. And then as soon as we walked in, we're like, we need to do a documentary on these like hidden gems, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I've been to a few myself. There's quite a few in this region. They're a great institution. The documentary really shows off what's so great about them, I think. How did you choose which Micropubs to use and which sort of characters, in the documentary to use?
We sat down and had a long think about how can we tell the story of these amazing places. And we thought the format of, after talking to Martin once or twice, we thought his kind of ethos is, if you want to do this, you can do this too. So we thought the best way to do will be like here's a rough guide of how you could potentially make your own Micropub. So we had to start our search looking for people that were in the process of, and we were very fortunate to meet Lucy, Richard and Trevor, all at slightly different parts of their journey. We actually interviewed Lucy the day before her grand opening, and then Trevor we met you before you'd even started your planning, really.
Yeah, I had a phone call from Mike at the Long Pond in Eltham, and that's where I got my idea from. It's the first time I'd heard of the word Micropub, when a story appeared in New Shopper about this plumber shop that was becoming a Micropub, and that's where the seed was sown, and Mike was aware of that, and then I think someone, it might have been yourself or Sid or whatever, contacted Mike and said, do you happen to know anybody that's starting a Micropub, because we'd like to follow the thing all the way through. And as you saw in the film initially, there was no work going on at all. It was my previous business was taking place inside the premises. So they were able to pick me up right from the beginning and follow it through.
And we called Richard a little bit further ahead, like he found his premises but hadn't actually started building. So I think we succeeded in finding from start to finish kind of storyline there.
How many hours of footage did you shoot to get to the final point?
We shot about 81 hours of footage across 3-4 years. Independent filmmaking at its best. And this, I think, was the second or third edit. I think our first edit was like 6.5 hours, and obviously that's not good enough. So it's hard enough trying to get some of my family to watch Lord of the Rings extended cut, let alone a documentary about ales. So we tweaked it around a bit. We had several different story arcs, and we think this one's the one that kind of got to the point quickest and allowed the amazing talent to shine through best.
Yeah, what was your aim then? So when you sat down, what points did you want to cover? How did you kind of create the narrative of the documentary?
So usually, me and Sid have been, we're like best friends in filmmaking. We met at a filmmaking club when we were like 14 years old. And we'd always done scripted stuff, so this was our first non-scripted piece. So basically we were filming, we did 3 or 4 day shoots. We did about 7 or 8 batches across the years. Because as you say, it can take a couple of years for the Micropubs to get to open it. And each time we'd sit down and go, right, we've got 10 hours of footage, what could we do here? So the whole story kind of happened in the edit. Although we were asking questions to kind of guide it, the story kind of changed every time we did a session of filming, because developments had changed, like new things were happening, meeting more and more people. We started off just meeting Martin, basically, who made the first Micropub, and he recommended someone, and as Trevor said, we got introduced to someone else, then they went onto the list for the next batch, they introduced us to someone else, and that's kind of how we got, I think we interviewed about 18 Micropub owners in the end. Sadly, we couldn't include them all. We really wanted to, but trying to get the story to fit like that, just over an hour-long format. Yeah, so it was tough. We did have a lot of conversations. I won't say arguments or disagreements. We had a lot of conversations. There were certain things that we just couldn't include just because we couldn't make it fit the narrative. Killing your darlings kind of thing. But we are looking to try and make another documentary or two out of the existing footage because we've still got about 79 hours unused at the moment. So we are currently looking at doing some other stuff around the subject matter.
I was going to ask, did you edit it yourself or did you get someone in to help out?
So the film was edited by Alex. He's our friend from university, so me and Sid went to Canterbury Christchurch together, as well as this after school club that we joined, who was a year below me. And Alex was in his year, and we started off, I think the first year, maybe, I kind of started the edit, but it was just so big a task, trying to fit it in around everything else. And we all sat down and we asked Alex if he wanted to get involved, and he did. Probably regrets it greatly now at times, trying to edit 81 hours of footage down, but he did an amazing job. And he was a really cool part of the storytelling. He was our fresh eyes, basically, to what we had, and he helped us suggest things to kind of do the final pick-up shoots, as it were.
Trevor, what made you want to open a Micropub in the first place?
Well, I was probably driven by the premises in the main. So, as you mentioned in the film, I bought the premises back in 1994 and had the two previous businesses, office supplies and then lingerie. And the lingerie business went from being a shop to being a shop and internet to just being internet, as that was really growing. So I started my internet site in '99, which was relatively early. But it became harder and harder, particularly after the financial crash in 2008. And eventually I was competing against my own suppliers, the big brands, the Playtexes and Gossards of this world were selling direct. And it was tough for a small operator. And I agonised about what to do with the premises. Could I turn it into residential? Would I get permission for that? And as I said earlier, then suddenly Micropub came across the horizon as a word. And having visited the Long Pond, it didn't happen immediately, but within a few days I thought, hang on, maybe I could do that. And made some initial inquiries to the council and said, is it feasible that I could turn this into another Micropub? And the answer was, yes, you could. Didn't realise how many hurdles there would be put in the way and how many hoops you'd have to jump through, mind you, at that stage. And maybe the person who said yes initially wasn't involved in putting all the hurdles and hoops in. That's how it all came together, really, the journey way back.
Danny, so apart from the edit, what other challenges did you face in making the film?
I suppose the main one that with all filmmaking, as you know, it's a very time intensive and can be quite costly. So we made this film, I think at the time we completed it, we actually finished it in lockdown 1, like the final score, grade, sound design was all completed in lockdown 1, which was actually kind of a good thing for our film because there was lots of people in our industry that couldn't get work and weren't supported through the different schemes that the government had on. So it was good for us to find people that we could help support. But we just didn't have a lot of money. Like, we did crowdfund and there's 87 amazing people that backed us. But we spent the first 2 odd years funding it ourselves, and eventually we're like, we've got something here, but we just need a bit of help to try and get some better kit to try and make the shoots easier. So like stuff like that, mics. I was doing the sound recording on the film, so I started off with boom mic, just a single boom mic. And then just travelling, really. We went as far up, we went kind of like Norwich way, but that was like 2 or 3 days out. We were really lucky that Charlie and Marie had a B&B as well as a Micropub, and they were brewed themselves. So, you know, we saved costs wherever we could, but it's mostly the money, I suppose.
So you're normally a narrative filmmaker, do you say, yeah?
Yeah.
Was there any inspirations in terms of other documentaries that you've watched and enjoyed in the past, maybe, that helped inform this one?
I don't think so. I watch a lot more documentaries now, having started it. The only real documentaries I kind of watched while I was at uni and stuff would have been like Michael Moore, and we did some stuff on Nick Broomfield, and so I hadn't had a lot of documentary experience. I hadn't really watched a lot of TV. I haven't really watched live TV for about a decade, so I haven't really watched, you know, like the TV shows that are based on reality. So we tried to apply as much of our skill set to it as possible. But I don't know, does it remind you of anything? I don't. We just made a film that we felt good to us.
Exactly. Was there any audience questions at this point? Yeah.
Hi, so which story would you have liked to have included which you had to cut out?
We're being recorded, right? To be honest, it's not a cop-out answer, but like pretty much everyone that we filmed had their own amazing kind of quirky stories for doing it. I suppose, yeah, they all had something different really. So we met people so there's people that you've gone in their pubs, but you don't see them talk on screen necessarily. So I think the Owl and the Pussycat, which is where we actually met Lucy. Like when she says, "Oh, I'll visit this first Micropub," and we just have that shot of her actually at this Micropub, and that was the day we met her. They left teaching, and they actually brew in the back of their pub. So I think their slogan was something like 10 foot from where it's brewed to where it's sold. I thought that was really quirky. Charlie Marie, that, you know, they have their own Airbnb, they have their own B&B, but on the same premises they've got a farm and they brew in one of the farm buildings, and they have their local Micropub directly about probably 10 steps away from their local Green King pub. The 1050 actually in Rochester, which is where the train goes over at the very beginning, that was hand built by Bob, who was a carpenter, and that's basically his back garden. He's built this pub. They were just really quirky, funny guys. Just explaining, they thought their pub was going to be for the coffin dodgers, to use their words, not ours. How they couldn't, you know, work out how the young folk, as they said, kind of found their place. But yeah, like there were some of the ones that they all had great stories. It's just really hard to try and get like 20 people's stories into an hour and a half format, really. I hope that's an okay answer.
Hi guys, firstly, well done. It's such a good film. It just makes you feel so warm watching something where people are achieving their goals. So we all want to start micropubs now, not do the work, just start them, just begin. But I did wonder if, with all the material that you weren't able to use, is there a TV series in there? I know it would be a very gentle one, everybody would be doing well, but and these days people want to see people struggle and fail. And that's one of the nice things about the film, that didn't happen, it was just telling it the way it is. But is there a TV series in that? Have you tried pitching it? Have you thought about it?
So interestingly, that was one of the things that me, Sid and James had discussed maybe about 6-7 months ago. We're like, well, we've got all this footage that we haven't used yet. What can we do with it? And we were thinking maybe like a mini sort of TV series as such, but it probably won't go on TV. So we broke it down into the different themes of the questions that we've asked people. But we'll probably just do what we've done with the film in terms of put it online for others to watch, and just try and use the fan base the film has made to be like, oh, actually, if you liked this film, then here's a section on potentially like the history and home brewing, for example. And there's another one over here that could be about the traditional pubs and the crisis that they've been going through for the last 30 years, etc. So that is something we're exploring, but I suppose it'll be an online series. So.
Sweet, awesome. You right, lads? All right.
Hey.
So 2 questions. Unfortunately, the lovely host has stolen most of mine. Gone for the director, and one for the Micropub manager. First one. When making this, you said you had made scripted films in the past. What has been your biggest difference in scripted and non-scripted filmmaking?
In short, it will be the edit really, because when you're shooting a script, you know exactly what you need to get to tell your story the way you wanted to tell it, and that makes the edit, not the editing is super quick, it makes it a lot quicker than like 4 years it took us to make this. The problem with making a story when you ask him a load of questions, maybe like 20 questions of like 6 people at a time, it's how do you carve that to make it flow? And I like to think we have got a free-flowing, natural-feeling doc there. But in some of the earlier edits, trying to include a lot too much, it's more difficult. And you just spend so much time thinking, is this, like trying to revert back to what's the point of this documentary? Does this cover that? And we just had to be quite brutal with it like that. So it's mostly, if it's scripted, you can work out I need 10 shots to make it work, where if you're filming like this, we just shot like, we were filming 100 gig sometimes in 2 days, which is lots of hours to have to go through. So just make sure edit's so much longer. It can kind of kill your vibe. If, like, I am an editor, and just watching like 8 hours of footage, and you're like, gosh, okay. And then you've got to go back to the beginning. I've spent a whole day just watching rushes, and then you have to go back again and then start pulling out the bits that might make sense.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, so if you've got a script, you're like, I've only got 2 takes of shot 1, take 1. I'll choose my favourite, and then we go from there. However, I do find this process a lot more fun. It's just the challenges are it's more time intensive, and a lot more hours sitting indoors while everyone else is outside having fun.
Nice, love the question. Answer. For the manager, how do you feel about the F word, that being Foster's?
Yeah, well, I try not to, basically. We try to amuse people. When people come in who like their lager, and they do, we do keep a couple of canned lagers in, I think good lagers, a Pils and a Hellers. But we're quite successful at getting people to have a crack at 1 or 2 other beers. And normally we have some success with people saying, oh, well, it would taste not as nice as this, and yes, I'll have another one. So it does work. You can convert people, but if they like their lager, well, so be it.
Personally, I think it's a good call, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, I'll give a bit mic back to Spence.
I must admit, before this documentary, I didn't even know about ale myself. So I've converted myself. Whilst you probably, if you watched it a second time, I did have short hair when we started this process. James had short hair, really long hair, cut it all off again in the time. I was drinking ale in most of the cutaway shots. Totally converted me because I didn't know either. And that was the point of the doc, to be like, there is something out there called beer, ale, that doesn't have to be fizzy. And there are places you can go to drink it. So.
Hiya. I myself am about to start my first, well, it's only in talks and we all know these things can fall apart, but a documentary, producing a documentary over the next 4 years in the run-up to the Winter Olympics. What would you say is like one thing that you know now that you wish you had have known when you started your journey?
Oh, really good question. I suppose the slight difference potentially between our projects, if you're building up to an event that you know that's has come many times before, so you can potentially research more into, you know, other things that have happened. Archive might be a lot more easier to come by, and you can decide exactly what your story is going to be ahead. So you're kind of doing a semi-scripted doc, potentially, I don't know. Where our one was, we would just turn up, interview some lovely people like Trevor, take a couple of hours up of their time, and then work out later on what we were going to do exactly with that. So trying to have as clear an idea as possible of how you think it might turn out, because it probably won't turn out that way. Ours changed at least 3 or 4 times. But yeah, it's try not to overshoot. You know, like I say, 79 hours didn't even make the screen. I wouldn't say we overshot, we just didn't know what we were, you know, what exactly our story was until about 50 hours in.
Because I didn't know it was unfolding either, how it was going to work out. So I would have one session with you and I'd say certain things, and then when you came along for the next session, things had changed and there was a different set of circumstances to deal with.
Yeah, so I hope that's helpful. Happy to have a chat with you after. But yeah, I think the great thing about making a film in the edit is you have complete freedom to do whatever. And we weren't restricted by a script filming. The downside of that is you've got a lot of footage to find time to edit down. But good luck with it. Hope you get it.
What's your favourite beer? Each one of you.
Oh, you go first. Not Foster's.
Oh,
Or Carlin's.
my out-and-out favourite beer, if I had to go for one, Oakham Green Devil probably would be up there, which is a Cascade Citra 6%. It would probably be something relatively strong, and I'd probably have to go for a beer that I could keep on drinking, so that would rule out a dark and probably a bitter. I'd probably have to go for a strongish pale. So yeah, I'd probably go for that, I think, if you asked me for one. Off the top of my head.
I'm quite partial to Beavertown's Neck Oil Gamma Ray, and when I have gone to some pubs, they've gone, "Oh, you're like going for like the most corporate of stuff," but that's just what I like, to be honest. But I didn't try a pint I didn't like in any of the Micropubs. So just try one if you haven't.
Absolutely. I should say we've got an excellent local brewery at the bar afterwards, if that's your fancy.
I'm going to try that in a minute, yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us, guys, and good luck with your future projects and everything else.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.